So according to the bio, it says Naomi Dunsen-White is an African-American author who loves writing stories that inspire and encourage children to use their creativity and imagination and also recognize their own potential. With a strong focus on reading comprehension skills, her books will always include fun comprehension questions to promote understanding and encourage family discussion. Naomi lives with her loving husband, Ron, and their pampered little dog, Nina Pooh. She enjoys baking, cooking, gardening, and spending time with family. Most of all, she loves reading books and writing stories for children. Naomi also tutors students and helps them with their reading and writing skills, too. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Reading Circle microphones, Naomi V. Dunsen-White. Naomi, good morning.
Good morning, Mark. How are you?
I am wonderful, thanks. And listening audience, you all know that I love themes. You know, we just came out of our Black History Month theme, and now it is March. It is Women's History Month, and most, if not all, of my guests for this month are women. For each Saturday in this month, I scheduled a woman in honor and recognition of Women's History Month. Now, let me be clear, because the same thing that I say about Black History Month is the same thing I say about Women's History Month. Women's history is 365 days a year, 24/7. But we acknowledge it in this month. As my guest last week said, just like African Americans are not a niche, women are not a niche either. So in other words, I know we pause in this month, just like we paused last month. But like I just said, women's history is made daily, 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. With that being said, though, I did schedule my guest thematically, and Naomi is our first woman in March. So again, Naomi, welcome to the Reading Circle.
Thank you. I feel so honored, really honored now. First woman.
So I tell you what, and you said you're calling out of Michigan, correct?
Yes.
All right, I've had a couple. Yes. Let me see. You're my second or third guest over the last couple of months that was calling out of the Michigan or either the Detroit area. And so that's awesome. So I think Michigan is leading my guest list this year in 2021. I think, like I said, you were our third or fourth guest that's been on from that area.
That's good.
Yes, it is. See, for me, it's about the more exposure we can get, the better. So the more that I can push out into the country and the world, that's better. So I get guests from all over the place. So I'm thrilled to have you on here. And she is a fellow educator. So you know I'm going to have some fun with this because I am an educator. As last week you heard Miles J say he was an educator and a communicator. See, I got to take that from him. I'm the same. I'm an educator and a communicator. And Naomi is a fellow educator. So we're going to be talking about Naomi's book. This is her first book, as well as kind of how she got there. And so that's where I'm going to kind of start. I see in your bio that it says you love reading books. Now, this show it was put together because it's about books. That's what it's about. Whenever the show first started 20 years ago, the station manager told me, I was looking for someone to do a show about books. You were a teacher. I thought you'd be perfect. That's a quote. So ever since that time, that's what we've been doing is, for the most part, promoting reading and promoting books. So one of my first questions I'm going to ask you is, like, I see that you said here that you loved it. Was that always the case? Did you always love to read as a child as well, or did that come later?
No, always. Always you could find me with a book.
So even as a child, you were kind of like, and see, I can relate because that's the way I was. You were kind of like the bookworm.
Yes, I was. In school, a lot of people said that, bookworm.
Did they?
Kind of a quiet person, and I enjoyed books so much.
Did you get teased? I mean, when they were saying that, were they saying that because they were teasing, or were they saying that because, okay, you know, you're just quiet, you like books, or were they just, that's the book? Because I know as a kid, you know, and I still to this day get teased to some degree. But the truth of the matter is, and this is my belief, I believe reading is the foundation for everything else, all the other subjects. I'm not taking anything away from the other subjects, but if you can't read, and interestingly enough, you're dealing with comprehension, because we're going to talk in great detail about that. Reading is the foundation for everything else. If you can't read, comprehend, and understand, you're really not going to get the other subjects either.
Exactly. So for me, reading was fun to me. I know a lot of people don't really, I hear people say, I don't like to read, and I don't understand that at all. I don't understand that. but reading was fun to me. It opened up new ideas to me, new places. You know, you could read about faraway places that you would only dream to go. I learned so much about the world. I learned a lot about people, and it was an escape for me too. You know, I was an introverted child, you know. I was quiet. So reading was something that I didn't have to do with anybody else. I could just, you know, have a book and enjoy myself for hours, and I did that. And
see,
yes, I was teased. Yes.
I can relate. And see, again, everything that you just described, and reading really is, all right, you know, I kind of vacillate. I go back and forth. I'm twixt in between, because on one hand, I will say reading is a hard sell. Then on the other hand, I will get in a situation with kids, or I will actually go into a bookstore and it really is filled with people. So I say, well, maybe people read more than I think. And then there are other times whenever I'm dealing with the students, whenever they'll say exactly what you said, oh, I hate to read, I don't like to read. And I can't relate to that statement either, because I love reading. I mean, like I said, I'm like you. I can get somewhere and sit there for hours. Matter of fact, and listening audience, those that listen faithfully, they've heard me share this before. The same way people can watch television for hours is the same way I can sit and watch, you know, read books for hours. And
yes, that's right.
Because I tell people I'm always in between, you know, and the number increases because I keep downloading. I'm like addicted to books. I keep downloading more and more books. So, and then I start them. So I always tell people I'm in between. It used to be 20 to 25. Now it's actually 30 to 40 books because I download everything on my Kindle. And so I'm literally between like 30 to 40 books. So people are like, what? How do you do that? The same.
But I get that because I do the same thing. I get it.
It's the same way you can sit and watch, you know, 5 hours of half-hour sitcoms. So if you watch, you know, 2 sitcoms an hour and you sit there for 5 hours, you've watched 10 sitcoms. So that's the same way it is for me reading. I'll read, you know, one book for 15 or 20 minutes or a chapter or two, go on to the next book, read 15, 20 or half hour, chapter or two, go on to the next one. And like you said, before you know it, 4 or 5 hours have gone by.
Yes. Yes. And have you ever, well, I know you have. I already know the answer to this, but I have to say it because it's one of the best things, one of my favorite things in life is when the book is so good that I don't want to look to see how much I have left because I don't want it to end.
Yes.
And then when it ends, I'm like, no, I'm not ready. I was just not ready for this book to end. So that's how I really get into my books. I'm really lost in a book. I can get lost.
And what you just described is when you know that an author has done his or her job. Because if they get you to that point wherein you don't want to put it down or you don't want it to end, or when it does end, you're looking for the sequel. Like, oh, my God, I know the author has to have a continuation here.
Yes. And there's been times when the book has ended and literally, I know this sounds really dramatic, but literally I've had tears in my eyes when the book ends.
Oh, that's right.
There's a couple of books that just never let go of me when that happened. One is James Baldwin, Tell Me How Long the Train's Been Gone. Did you read that?
I haven't, but see, what I do is now you just gave me another book to download.
Wow. Yeah, that was something. That was really something. That it took you through so many emotions, and his writing is just, he's on a whole different, he's great. He's just great. He's one of my favorites.
Now, he said, Tell Me How Long the Train Has Been Gone. That's the title of it?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna, before the day's end, I'll have that one. Now, interestingly enough, I've been to his gravesite. He and Paul Robeson, they're right across from each other. Paul Robeson, James Baldwin. I mean, it's this particular cemetery up in New York and has many notables buried there. And Malcolm X is there. So every now and again, because it's not that far from where I live, I'll just take a ride up there and go up there and visit their graves. And James Baldwin is one of them.
I would love to do that. And I'm going to tell you that this, I can't remember Eddie Glaude, Dr. Eddie Glaude from Princeton University.
Yes.
He just wrote, he's amazing. I love him. I love to hear him speak. But he wrote a book last year, and it was called Begin Again. And he actually delved into James Baldwin's life.
Wow.
And it is amazing, some of his early writings. He could be writing about what was going on last year with Donald Trump and all of those things. It was like he was foretelling.
Right.
But that's another one. You have to put that one on your list.
So, and I'm familiar with Dr. Glaude as well, and matter of fact, I had a couple of his books also, and I don't remember the titles off there, but I know I have at least one of his because I know the name. I might have more, and like you said, he's on YouTube and various presentations, what have you. Yes, so I know exactly who you're talking about. So again, now we're coming through, and you did reading while you were coming through as a child, and okay, before I even get into that, kind of what do you think? Because I know what for me. Was the touchstone, or what started me with my passion for reading? What started that as a child? Because again, I deal with kids every day, and a lot of times, exactly what you said is what we get. I don't like to read. I don't want to read. I hate reading. So what for you is what got you into books at that young of an age?
I don't know. It just seemed to fit with me. You know, I'm not one of those people that has a clear, sharp memory of my toddler years or young years, so I really don't know. I just always loved to read. I remember Ezra Jack Keats, those old books, when you first saw a black child in a book, Whistle for Willie,
right.
Snowy Day, Letter for Amy, and that was really something for me. And then the other book that really did something for me was the one with Corduroy the Bear with the black girl named Lisa.
Yes.
It was the first time I saw a black girl that, you know, was in a book like that. And so I remember feeling like, well, this is really somebody who looks like me. So that was really good. And I always grew up thinking that person was black, but actually Ezra Jack Keats is a white man. A lot of people don't know that, but he's a white man. But he made books about black children, which was very nice. And I just always wanted to read, and I imagined, what if I was this person in the story, you know, like little kids do.
Correct.
But I was just one of those kids that was always in my head, you know.
Well,
so
this
reading
is the
was
thing.
Perfect.
You brought up an extremely interesting point that I've heard so many authors, particularly African-American authors, bring up. And I remember corduroy because my children had corduroy books. My daughters had corduroy books. I remember them well. But you brought up the whole thing of character that looked like me. That's something that I had never given a whole lot of thought to until over the years I've heard so many African-American authors bring that point out about one, there weren't books that had characters that looked like us. So for many of the authors, the fact that they now, because they recognize that and say, well, since there is nothing out there, I'm going to put it out there. And so over the years, more and more people have written books that displayed folks or characters in the book that look like us. But I'll answer the first question whenever I ask you a question about what kind of started you. For me, my father was an avid reader, so he would come home every day after work and read Ebony and Jet and newspapers and books. He was my model for that, so I picked up on that. Now, my sister, on the other hand, was just the opposite. She's one of those that'll say she hates to read. My sister, she a book like, no, I'm not reading any book. So she's the exact opposite. But for me, seeing my father do it every day when he came in, I picked up on the same thing and developed a love for it. So I try to help parents and kids understand and a couple of things with reading, because we're going to work our way to your book and comprehension shortly. First thing, a lot of reasons why people say they don't like to read is because they don't read what they're interested in. Because if they would pick their passion or whatever they're interested, there's a book about everything. There is nothing under the sun that a book is not written about. So if they would pick books in their passion, they would like to read eventually. In terms of whenever I did my action research for my master's in education, that was my research project. Would kids read more if they were reading their choice versus what the school tried to force down their throats? And I'm saying that in that way. But for the most part, rather than assigned works from the teacher, and I actually did a study with a school, like the kids had to keep reading logs and everything in terms of a book they self-selected versus a book that was assigned by the teacher. And I wanted to see, was there a difference? And sure enough, that's what the action research came out. The hypothesis came true, that books they self-selected, they read more and longer compared with assignments from school that said, well, you have to read, whatever the book title is, this is part of the curriculum. So clearly, if folks would figure out whatever it is if they're interested in video games, there's books out there on how to make video games, how to play video games. There's books on that. If they're interested in cooking, there's books out there on cooking. If they're interested in mechanics, there's if you're interested in like, I have a lot of kids in my building who are interested now in animation. There's books out there on animation. So it's not a matter of not liking to read. If they would connect what they love to do and now get books or magazines or whatever about it, I think the love for reading would come. Yeah. And you said something very interesting earlier, too. We could read books and go to places in our minds and in that book that we may never travel to physically.
Yes. Yes. And I don't know why that's not interesting to some people, but it's always been interesting to me. And I have always been a lover of words. I love words. I do. I hear a word and it falls on my ear in a certain way. I know that sounds strange.
No, it does. Not to me.
I love words, and my family teases me like I'm the word police or something because I'm a grammar nut too. And it, the feeling that you get when someone takes their fingernails on a chalkboard, that's the feeling I get when I hear somebody say something that is wrong grammatically, or I see someone writing something with an apostrophe that doesn't belong there. Those types of things. That it's like a little teacher nerdy thing.
Well, then if that's the case, you and I are nerdy together. Matter of fact, on my desk in my office, I have one of these little placards that says, and it's right there. Like if you sit in front of it, you will read it. It says, "I'm silently correcting your grammar." That's what it says.
I have that T-shirt. Wait, Mark, I have I actually have a T-shirt that says that. That's hilarious.
But that's what's on my desk. It's like one of these little plaques that says I'm sorry. And it I know exactly especially as certain things like your and your. When somebody says your, it is like the fingers on the chalkboard. You're right. When someone says you're welcome, YOUR, it, oh my God, drives me silly. And it's like, so, I mean, I've had like people text me. I've literally texted them back saying it's your, YOU''RE. And when I see it on Facebook and in social media, it is exactly like you described, like the fingers going across the chalkboard.
Yeah. So we're nerds. Okay. We admit it.
Yeah. Well, we're self-admitted nerds. We'll take it. Right. But you know what? So be it. But there is a difference between your and your. And so
and the apostrophe is what drives me nuts. The apostrophe S. People, it's a plural.
Correct.
It just needs an S, but people will add an apostrophe. And I don't know what happened there, but that seems to be so prevalent. And I don't understand. But okay. I don't want to be too critical of people, but
I'm with you because and people really get messed up if there's a word to have an S on the end or a name like Williams, and you want to say Williams's, and you have to put the apostrophe after the S, not before it. So people they don't get that all those different things. Now this is the other thing. In all fairness, to some respects, and it's sad. I don't know about in Michigan or not, but in some respects, they've taken grammar out of the curriculum.
Yep.
Which is
or what they've done is it's kind of a mix-up of stuff that they're teaching instead of focusing a long period of time or enough period of time on grammar specifically.
No, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, it's included in the language arts.
That's
umbrella,
exactly what it is. Matter of fact,
that umbrella.
That's what. No, I'll tell you exactly what they say. You have to integrate it. You can't teach it as a standalone. You can't.
We had it as a standalone.
That's correct. That's my point. When we were coming through school, those things were. That's why we know them. It was taught as a standalone. It wasn't taught integrated. The integrated is why folks don't get it. They don't.
They're not given enough time to pick up on it and to really master it before they're moving on to something else. Same thing with remember cursive writing. We all learned.
They took that out too.
Unbelievable.
Now this is the thing. This again as an educator, as a principal, and it mystifies me because this is what I've seen cycles of. They take something out of curriculum, which are basics, fundamentals and basics. Then the child now gets to 5th, 6th, 7th, or 8th grade, and now the question comes: why can't the child do it? It's like, well, you took it out of the curriculum. So you took, and then it's this big push to put it back in the curriculum. So the basics keep going in and out of the curriculum. That's the crazy part. But when I was a child, all those things that we're talking about was taught standalone. We had the opportunity to master it. But that's why you have so many people now that don't know the difference between your and your. Or THIER, EIR, and THERE.
THERE.
And THEY apostrophe RE. That's right. That's why they don't know these things, because they're not taught as standalone. All right. So, all right, we've kind of come through in terms of how you developed your love for reading. You did that as a child, which is wonderful, because most of the time, every now and again, I'll get an author who says, no, they didn't like reading as a child. I was like, okay, so it came later in life. But most of my authors, hence the reading circle, most of my authors loved reading somewhere along their journey. And a lot of times, either they loved both reading and writing, or because of the reading, they began to write, or what have you. That's where we're kind of working our way up to with you. Did you now, as you were in high school or in college or what have you, did you now take the reading that you loved and start writing, or where did the writing piece come from?
My writing, I think, did come from loving to read. Excuse me. I used to write as a child. As much as I would read, I would be writing. I'd write little stories. I'd write poetry. I'd write in a journal. But I was always making up some stories, even as a little kid, making up stories about a child or some, being inspired by a book. Like, I can write a story, and I would just write these stories. I don't think they were that good at that point, but I always loved to write, and I always felt like I could write a good story. As I got older, they got better, my poetry got better, and I did always dream of writing a book one day, and I always knew it would be a child's book.
So, okay, so for you, in your instance, you loved both. You loved reading and writing as a child.
I did.
Okay.
And I'm a good writer. I love to write. I'm a good writer. I'm the go-to person in this circle of friends and family. If you need something written or proofread, you bring it to me. And, I'll help you, or I'll, edit it for you, or help you with the writing, or write it for you. I love to write. I really do.
That makes sense, because we've been doing it since we were kids, because I'm kind of like that same way. And again, some, folks have different journeys and different paths, and they come to things at different times. But for those of us who've been doing it since we were kids, we are probably pretty good at it, because we've been doing it so long. So
it goes back to, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
To interrupt you.
No, you didn't. Go ahead.
Say, it goes back to what you were saying about the interest level. It depends on, if you know what your child is interested in, let them go with that. Don't send them in another direction. Let them go with that. Everybody's always known that Naomi likes to read, and I like to write. And that's what I've always enjoyed since I was a kid, and I've just continued with it, and I've gotten better. One of the books that I'm working on for the future, I have some other children's books, but it's a book about, is your child an excellent reader? And if not, why not? And it talks about these tips for parents that you were just talking about. Find out what your child is interested in, and just let them go in that area. Find books that they like. Don't try to force a book down their throat, like you said, that they're not even interested in.
That's correct.
That's one of the chapters in the book is know your child. Like that scripture,
right?
Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he will not depart from it. That goes outside of the religious realm too.
Yes, it
does.
Know
your child. What is your child's nature? What is your child's bent? What gets them excited? What makes them dream and imagine? Find that, know that, and let that child just go free in that area.
No, absolutely.
And I feel the same way. Yeah, same way with reading.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I'll tell you why. And you brought up a very good point in terms of, and parents, and we are well-meaning. I get it, but at the same time, sometimes we're doing more harm than good, and the very thing that we're trying to create is what we're destroying. And what I mean by that is, let's say, for example, and I know Barnes & Noble, I think, is countrywide, I believe. That was one of the larger retailers that's left in terms of books. And then, of course, you have your independent shops.
Right.
You take your child now into one of those stores, and now you pick the book for them. And to your point, it may or may not be something they're interested in.
Right.
And at that point, that's when the child's like, I don't like that. I'm not interested in it. And you're forcing me to read. That's where a dislike for reading can now begin to come into play. Because it's like, okay, mom and dad wants me to read this book. The school wants me to read this book. I don't like either one. So I'm not going to read. Compared with if you were to now walk into a large book retailer and said, okay, Johnny, Jimmy, Sally, Sue, Raheem, whomever, whatever you're interested in, go run around the bookstore and find books that you're interested in. What I tell kids all the time is I really don't care what they read as long as it's not porn.
No, is it?
Long
Okay.
as it's not something inappropriate. If you want to read comic books, you can read comic books. If you want to read magazines, you can read magazines. If you want to read books, you can read books. If you want to read romance novels, you can read romance. I really don't care what genre. Like I said, as long as it's not inappropriate.
Right.
You go pick what
Let
you
them
want.
read.
Because most of the time, of course, the boys, and I don't want to stereotype, but a lot of the boys are going to pick something sports related. Okay, fine. They might pick something car related. Okay, but every now and again, you'll get a boy that's like, you know what, I want to read the cookbook. Okay, fine, read the cookbook. As long as you're reading, that's the point. As long as you're reading. And folks, that, like I said, in some instances, sometimes it's a tough sell. Because for, I think, people like me and you, when we read books, literally, it's no different than us watching a movie. That the book and the visual is going through our mind the same way the visual and watching a TV program.
It is. It's a movie in our head.
Yes.
Really. Yep.
No,
That's
you're
perfect.
absolutely right. Because whenever I read books, I can, if I want one of the characters to be Denzel Washington, then you know what? Yeah, he reminds me of a Denzel. And if I want the other one to be somebody else, yep, she reminds me of a. So in my mind, as I'm reading that book, those are the folks that are playing those parts.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I know exactly what you mean. And that's what I want for children, and especially our children. I love all children, but I love my people.
Oh, of course.
I do. And our children, when we were growing up, we had so many things already stacked up against us, and our children are dealing with that, plus all of the stuff that goes on as far as society, social media, and the celebrity world, and everything is visual and stimulating them, with their eyes instead of their minds. And I just want our children to free themselves,
Oh, absolutely.
I want to put as much, effort into awakening them, that gift that they have inside. And that's kind of my motto for writing, is that I do believe that every child has a gift within them just waiting to be discovered. But it has to be discovered.
Yes,
we have to help them do that.
If you have just joined me, while I always want you to be with me at 6 when I come on the air, I definitely want you to be on 7 when I have my guests on. My guest this morning is Naomi V. Dunsen-White, and she is an author as well as an educator, among other things, and we're talking about her first book, and we're working our way up to it. It's a children's book, and some of the things that Naomi is saying is exactly what her book is about and does. And matter of fact, one of them was what she just said in terms of letting kids know that they're gifted. All of them have a gift, not some, all of them. All right, it's just a matter of them or us pulling it out of them. Because really, I tell folks all the time, if you look up the true definition of education, most of us think education is about pouring something in, when truly the definition of education is pulling something out.
I love that.
So education really is not about us as teachers pouring something or putting something into a child. For us as teachers, the challenge is to pull it out what's already in them. Exactly what you just said. And every child has a gift. They do.
They do.
So in terms of, I'm trying to see, do I want to tackle the comprehension issue first, or do I want to tackle the fact that you have Johari, which is an African-American character, on the cover of the book. And it says Johari the Great. That's the title of the book. And it's a children's book. What age, when you say children's book, what kind of like is the age group?
If I could make an age range, I would say, of course, depending on the skill level of the reader, because you do have some really early readers. So I would say 7 to 12. And
Okay.
that seems to be, as far as the feedback and the reviews that I'm getting, that seems to be a good age range. Now, the highest compliment for me is when adults tell me how much they loved the book for themselves, and older children have read it and they love it. So I tried to write it with all of those children in mind. I didn't want it to be just a young, early reader book that would be boring to a little bit older reader.
Right.
So, yeah, I tried to use all my love for reading, how I like to read, and what I think when I'm reading, and also when I was younger, what I like to read, and what a book did to me. You know, basically that's how I feel, because books do things to me. And I thought about that as a child, what I wanted this book to do to children and which children. So that's what I did when I wrote it. I kept those things in mind to reach that group of children all the way up. For you, I think you would like to read. I think you would like the book.
Oh, so for sure.
You would even like it.
One way or the other, I'll get a copy of it. I don't know if it's available electronically, and I usually wind up downloading the Kindle. But if not, I'll get the hard copy or the soft copy of it.
Yeah.
And
you got Kindle. It's on Kindle.
It is?
And I'll send you. Yeah, I'll send you. There's a quote that I want to share with you, and it's by C.S. Lewis. And you know, C.S. Lewis was one of the greatest writers. And he said, a children's book that can only be enjoyed by children is not a good children's book at all.
There you go. That's exactly
right.
right.
I kept in mind. That's exactly what I tried to keep in mind. Yep. And that's true. Yeah, it shouldn't be just for kids, you know?
That's right.
Well,
but see, this is going back to that commentary you made earlier about the book is so good you don't want it to end. And that's why I said if the author has really done his or her job, that's the effect that you want to have. So that quote is kind of saying the same thing from the standpoint of a children's book. Mm-hmm. There was something you said earlier, and again, you're not the first, and listening audience, really by now, it ought to be a point that's hammered home, but it's more significant than I think people understand, and could be one of the reasons that contributes to the fact that African-American children may or may not want to read. And that was this whole notion of characters that look like them. Yes,
I'm so glad you're bringing that back up. Yep.
That is critical.
It is. I actually have some really interesting data to share with you.
Please do.
And this is good. This is good for your listeners, too, because it is an issue that a lot of authors today are trying to address, a lot of authors of color, Black or African-American authors in particular. So this is something that the Cooperative Children's Book Center, CCBC, and they do a review of children's literature, and they usually do it by year. They were held up last year because of the coronavirus, so the 2020 information hasn't come out yet, but the 2019 information is out, and let me share this with you. And again, this is the Cooperative Children's Book Center, so they reviewed thousands of books that are out in our market for that year, and they break them down and give the statistics on the books. So for 2019, out of 3,716 books that they surveyed, this is how it breaks down. White main characters, 41.8% of all the children's books out in our market, they're white characters, 41.8%, almost half, right?
Correct.
Animals like teddy bears, dogs, whatever, animals, 29.2%. Those are the main characters. Those are the characters in the book. So white, 41.8, animals, 29.2. Black and African-American children or characters, 11.9. 11.9. Just a little bit more than 1/3 of what the animals get. So there's more books out there about bears and dogs and fish and cats and whatever than there are about our children. Now, that's wrong. That is wrong. I really feel that children need to see themselves in books, and then they may pick up books more often. That's how I feel. And I think a lot of other authors feel that way more today than before.
And I can tell you that's because that 11% number probably is the highest it's been. It probably had you done the study some years ago, you know, if you go back 15, 10, 20 years ago, the number wasn't even close to 11.
Even 5 years, the numbers go down. So in 2019, Black characters that were presented in the books written by Black people, so by Black author for Black people, 224 books in 2019. Okay, books about Black characters, 451. So just like Ezra Jack Keats, he did books about Black characters, but he was not Black. So we have that as well.
That's interesting. I want you, that study that you brought up, you have to email me that. I would like to see that as well, because that is interesting in terms of, and people think, and I know we always, particularly coming out of Black History Month, where we really talked a lot about racial issues. People a lot of times think, you folks are just too sensitive. Oh, we're always talking about race. Oh, but you need to understand when you start talking only 11%, which is kind of close to, if you look at it from the standpoint of, all right, if you look at the population, African Americans are about 13 or 14% of, the United States or what have you. Well, okay. So if you look at it from that standpoint where it kind of sort of lines up, and that's what I was saying, 11 is probably high in comparison to other years. But then when you...
the highest.
Right. And then when you compare it to the fact that animals were what? 20 what?
29.
29. That's what I thought you said.
Right.
So animals were 29. That's over double. That's almost 3 times.
It's almost yes. That's my whole point. So look, here's this sentence that's in this study. Taken together, books about white children, talking bears, trucks, monsters, potatoes, whatever, it represents nearly 3/4, 71% of all children's and young adult books published in 2019. So together, white children and animals, 71% of all the books out there. So when you think about that, and then 11.9% for Black children, where they can open up a book and see themselves and imagine themselves doing these things, accomplishing things, having fun, whatever the book is about. Think about that. 71% white and animals.
Correct.
And only...
And see, what
does that do to a child?
That's exactly right, because I am big on connecting the dots and looking at the bigger picture. There are root causes and reasons why things happen. So you just can't make the assumption that Black kids are lazy, none of them want to read, this, that, and the other. That's not necessarily just the case. But when you start doing things, as we're talking about in terms of children now are picking up books that look like them, that will spark that interest. Well, let me see what this child is doing because that child looks like me, in comparison to a book that they might look at and say, well, you know what, I can't relate to that because that child has experiences that I don't have.
Right.
And a small
You're
child,
absolutely right.
Right, a small child may not be consciously thinking that, but at the same time, they're looking at something and saying, well, that's not me. And now, thankfully, more and more people are awakening and really consciously saying, whether white or Black, because you're saying the author of Corduroy is white or Black, they're beginning to wake up and say, we need to, make this thing more diverse of what folks look like. All right, so I'm looking here at your cover, Johari the Great. I'll do the book first, then we'll talk comprehension. Talk to me a little bit about Johari the Great. You already established for us that you have a vivid imagination. So, and you've been writing since you were a child. So where did Johari the Great come from?
Johari, that name, first of all, is Swahili, and it means jewel.
Correct.
Jewel, but it is the name of my oldest grandson, Johari. That is his name. And the book was inspired by him. One day, I visited them, and then I think on the way home, you miss your family, you're thinking about them. And he was the oldest, and there was just one younger child at that time. And I was just thinking about him. He was so smart. I couldn't believe how smart this kid was. He was always telling me about something new he learned, and, oh, Nene, did you know this, or did you know that? And half the time I didn't, and he would be filling me in on it. And I imagined what he would do if there was no internet, there was no cell phones, just what he would do with his imagination if there was nothing else. And I wrote a book about it. I wrote that story. The story was intended to just be a birthday gift for him, just a little story. And something something just happened as I was writing it. I just knew it was supposed to be more. I knew it was supposed to be more. And I just felt it coming out of me, and I just went with it, and I kept it. And then over the years, I tweaked it a little bit. He now has 5 younger brothers and sisters, and I used their names and added characters to the story. So they each see their name in the book. But I just knew that, I know this sounds a little dramatic again, but I just knew that God intended it to be an actual book, not just a little story. And it had a really good message to share to inspire children. And so that's what I did. I held on to it. And then during the coronavirus, when we were at home, when things first happened, excuse me, it was the perfect time. It was just the perfect time to do it. And I just felt inspired, and I knew it, and I went for it.
Well, again, as I was listening to you, and I told you my questions actually come from your responses. There's something that you said that was, again, critical, and that was the name Johari. And you went into the explanation saying it was Swahili and meant jewel. Yes. And let me tell you what, because one of my daughters, her name is Swahili as well. Her name is Niara. And Niara means of high purpose. Wow. And kids also need to understand, I was just having this conversation with someone yesterday, the importance of naming. Names,
yes. Yes, absolutely. My name means pleasant spirit. And
correct.
I've always known that my name means pleasant as a child. And I just always wanted to live up to my name. I tell people that a lot. That is my personality. I think if you ask someone who knows me to describe me, they would probably say it's pleasant. And
now,
that is my name.
You're a wordsmith, so you'll know the answer to this question. What word do we hear the most in our lifetimes?
Probably no.
Well, no. What in terms of what we were just talking about, what words do you hear the most over the course of your life?
Oh, your name.
Correct.
Definitely, your name. Yeah, absolutely.
That's correct.
So they're speaking who you are.
Correct.
Your name is speaking life into you. That's it.
So
absolutely.
And just like you said, most people, consciously or subconsciously, live up to what their name is. This conversation I was having with the student a couple of days ago was that I know folks that their real name is Doctor. And they ultimately became doctors. I know a young man, his name was Art or Arthur, but we called him Art. He became an art dealer. I've known folks that they've literally become what their name is.
And that's what they were supposed to do.
That's correct. And so that's why it is so important with naming. See, there was a couple of things when I was naming our children. When we were naming our kids, it needed to flow. I didn't like something that sounded like it was just slammed together, and it needed to have meaning. And the kids needed to understand what their name meant. And so that's the first thing. But now the title of the book says Johari the Great. And I'm looking at the picture on your website. Is that a cape on him?
Yes, it is.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Yes, it is.
So now we have that. Yes. Sadly, unfortunately, with African American kids, the word great usually is not associated with them.
Yeah.
Sadly.
That's a good point.
So the fact that you now have an African American child on the cover with a Swahili name that says the Great, it's not Johari the Thug. It's not Johari the thief. It's not Johari the pimp. It's not Johari the lazy. Not Johari it's Johari the Great. Now, if I'm a child and I've now picked up that book and it's in color because it's not black and white, they can see full well as an African American child, and it says Johari the Great, that's going to pique my curiosity because kids usually are interested in superheroes. That's why Black Panther.
That's right.
That's why, whenever you got into that movie, it outsold everything else.
That's right.
Wakanda and all of that. That's why out of all the Marvel characters, that one took off, and they didn't even expect that. But in any event, kids love superheroes. All right. So now you have a child, shorts, book, T-shirt. Because that is a book in his hand, right?
Yes, I was going to say.
Okay, all right. I'm just kind of I'm trying to paint the picture for the listening audience.
Yeah.
So we have Johari the Great. He has a book in his hand. He has on a cape, and he's an African American child. there's a lot of messages being sent just in that cover.
That's right. What in his hand that's being held up like a superhero? What's in that hand?
That's a pen, isn't it?
That's it. It's a pencil.
Pencil, okay, because I'm looking at the photo on the website. So he has his hand, his right fist up in the air with a pencil. All right. So now, and this like connects so much for me because I had
this says a lot, right?
It does. I had a meeting with a child yesterday. It was me and the guidance counselor, and kid's a sixth grader. And so at one point in the meeting, I wanted him to take down my telephone number. So I just, you have a pen and paper with you? No. I said, you know what? Don't you ever come to a classroom or to a meeting without a pen, pencil, and paper. Wow. And I just had this conversation yesterday because we're constantly trying to get our students to take notes. So that's another thing that was kind of taken out of the curriculum to a degree, but we're constantly pushing taking notes. You got to take notes when you're in the class. Take notes. So I told the child, don't you ever come to a meeting or a classroom again without a notebook and something to write with. And so now I'm looking at what's on your cover, but a book and something to write with.
Yep. And a child can see that. They see he's a superhero, but what is he holding up high? A pencil.
Correct. So what is kind of like don't tell the entire, but kind of give the gist. Kind of give, a summary, because I want folks to get the book. And then ultimately, if you're in the education system, it might be a book you want to add to your library. All right. But so what's the gist of the story?
Okay, so I wrote a little something so I could easily speak about this. So my subtitle is A Boy, His Imagination, and a Freshly Sharpened Pencil. So Johari the Great is it's an early chapter book. It's fully illustrated. It's an engaging story about a boy who loves adventure stories. He's inspired by his teacher, and he begins to write. A contest and a mystery follow, and there's a fun plot twist, too. So with a little humor and some help from his friends, Johari discovers his gift and the greatness he has inside. It's an inspirational story that celebrates diversity, learning, family, community, and the greatness that all children have inside just waiting to be discovered. And because I put the emphasis on reading comprehension and vocabulary, there are actually 2 worksheets that come in the back of the book. Comprehension and a little vocabulary as well. So I was hoping to promote family discussion, for the questions, and to actually enhance the understanding to make sure that the child not only enjoyed the book, but understood.
And see, again, for those of you I know this is not television, so you wouldn't be able to see. However, at the end of the interview, I will give Naomi a chance to promote, and she'll give you her website. You can go to her website and you'll see exactly what I'm seeing. But it's a powerful cover. It's simple, but it's powerful, or as they say, simple yet profound in terms of, again, the name, Johari, Johari, the Great. Like she said, the child is holding a pencil up in the air, like that's his superpower, and the book in the other hand he has on a cape, all right? So there's a message right there in the cover. And then everything that she just said in terms of like a synopsis of the book, in terms of kind of like the gist. But she just said also that she's included things on comprehension. This is where I'm going to shift into that piece. Because now this is the educator part that's going to come out of us, folks. But if you understand this, you'll be able to help yourself and your child. Reading has different components to it, all right? And many people get them confused, particularly students, all right? Mm-hmm. And what I'm talking about is you have, of course, phonics and blends. That's, like trying to sound out and make the sounds. Then you have what we call decoding. That is the actual ability to call off the word. Now, because you can decode a word does not necessarily mean that you know what it means. Many people confuse decoding and comprehension, all right? So that's why the comprehension piece is. So the comprehension means that you actually read the piece, you processed it, you understood it, and you're able not only to understand it, but you can tell and talk about it, what it meant to you in your own words, not necessarily that you have to say the exact words the author said. So when we're talking reading comprehension, we're talking the ability to first say the words, to figure out what the word is. then be able to say it. And then once you've said it and put them together, understand what it meant. Where I'm going with this, Naomi, is I'll get so many, Mr. Millie, I know how to read. Like, okay, you know how to call the word. What was the story about? Like crickets. Could not tell me, well, what was the author trying to say there? Can't answer that question. Well, what did you get out of it? You just read it. You just spent 15 minutes reading that piece. What did you learn from it? Crickets.
Right.
That's why that comprehension piece is big.
It is. And what I say to parents, too, about purchasing the book, this is your opportunity to see where your child is. It's not just up to the teacher, but you sit and read this book with your child and answer the questions. Ask the child to answer the questions. Make it something you're doing together. It will give you an idea of where your child's strengths are and where they may need some improvement. Because a lot of times parents just think, oh, well, they're doing fine in school. Yeah, but this is an opportunity for you to see how true that is.
No, it's true because sadly, and I keep it real, I'm very transparent. Sadly, we have a lot of parents, not every parent, and I'm saying this, I don't like the general broad brush, but we do have a lot of parents who are in denial. They have a child in the 6th or 7th grade that's on a 1st or 2nd grade reading level, and that's exactly what you just said. Oh, he's doing great. Oh, no, he don't need a tutor. Oh, no, he don't need a reading specialist. No, he's in the 8th grade. Tutor say he's doing great. It's like, no. The child is on a 2nd grade reading level, even though he's in the 8th grade. Okay?
Yeah.
But that's, again, going back to, a combination of things. Either they can't call the words, they can't blend, they can't do them phonetically, or they can read every word that the thing says, but they didn't understand what they read. Or you get into a situation where it's so much focus is on trying to figure out the words that you never really do get a chance to comprehend. That every other word you don't know.
Right.
Every other word you can't decode. You can decode some words, but you can't decode others. And because now you're stuck on the word that you can't decode, you never did get to the comprehension piece.
No, you never got the full meaning.
Right.
Never got the full meaning. So that's what I'm talking about. Those are the things I'm trying to reach. That's the area I'm trying to reach in the child. And it's a perfect opportunity, like I said, for the parent to see what really is going on with comprehension and vocabulary, too. You may see a word and think, oh, I heard that word before. But can you use it? Can you use it in a sentence? So these things are important, and that's why I included the worksheet. And hopefully to get the book in schools, I've also included a teacher packet, which has vocabulary, spelling, reading comprehension, grammar, so that the teacher can present the book and actually have a whole week worth of worksheets and things that will make the teacher's job a bit easier as well.
So in terms of, like you just said, with vocabulary, I had this same young man that I was talking about that I said, don't you ever go to a meeting without a piece of paper and a pen. Back to the vocabulary piece, we were talking about, we said the word device. Now, the guidance counselor and I, we used the word device when we were talking about Chromebooks or telephones or whatever. We said device. So I asked the young man, do you understand what we mean whenever we say device? And he started giving me all kinds of answers that had nothing to do with what I'm doing. I said, no. I want you to give me the definition of the word device. Couldn't do it. But finally, I had to say, your laptop, your telephone, those are devices. So then it dawned, this is why whenever I'm telling you, don't use that device to do this, he has no idea what I'm talking about.
Exactly. He's just assuming. He's making an assumption.
Right. So we might as well be speaking a total. When I said don't use your device, I might as well have been speaking Chinese.
Right.
From a processing standpoint, because he didn't realize when I said device, I was talking about his phone.
Exactly. Right.
So that's what.
And it sounds like something so simple, but I mean that's important. That is important.
Right.
Comprehension is important. It really, really is. And decoding. I don't know how you can continue to progress if you don't master those skills. That's why I couldn't just write the book. I want to make sure that the students read the book, enjoy the book, and understand the book. So when I'm tutoring children in writing, that's what I always tell them. It is the writer's responsibility to make sure that the reader does two things: enjoy and understand. That's not their fault if they don't do it. It's your fault.
Correct.
Because you haven't done a good enough job.
Correct. That's absolutely right. That's absolutely correct.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the other thing in terms of the interest level. When you get to the point, particularly with children, even for me as an adult, when you get to the point where you don't even realize you're learning because you enjoy it so much,
yes,
you've hit the sweet spot. You've hit the target.
yes. Yeah. And that's what we were talking about before. When you're reading the book and you're enjoying it so much, you don't want it to end. You're completely disappointed when it ends. Yeah.
And if you can create, because I know anything that I try to teach, anything that I teach, because I have the opportunity to teach at the college level, and I've done some teaching in my church and all, and people always tell me, "Wow, you know what? You really kept it moving. You really kept it interesting." And I always tell people, "Look, let me help you understand. I've been in school a lot of years, a lot of days, and I always try to prepare my lessons in a way that if I were the student sitting in there, I would be interested, because I hate it being bored in a class."
That's right. That's right.
So as an author, you just said pretty much the same thing, that I want to create this in a manner that the same way I experience a book and don't want to put it down, I want my reader of my book to do that.
Yep. It's the same thing. Yes. And I'm telling you, the highest compliment is when a parent or a grown-up who's read my book says that to me. Like, I couldn't wait to figure out what happened. It was so good. It was so interesting. It held my attention. So that really makes me feel great. That makes me feel like I've done my job.
Absolutely, especially now, because this is the other shoe that needs to fall. And I mean, I'm looking at your picture, but I heard you say a grandson, but I think you're younger than I am. But there are so many other alternatives to books that the kids have today in terms of being distracted, in terms of the internet, in terms of social media. But even that you have to read. I mean, so even those things, you still have to read it. That's the thing. In all honesty, I really do feel sorry for adults or children who cannot read in 2021, because most of everything we do requires you to be able to read and comprehend, whether you're reading instructions, whether you're looking at directions. I've seen folks stand at the ATM machine and had no idea what the ATM was telling them to do.
Oh, my goodness.
They had, and the ATM, and the thing is, the technology is getting more and more sophisticated, because when ATMs first came out, it was maybe one or two instructions or commands. Now, when you go to the ATM, it asks you a whole litany of questions. And there are people who've gotten there and they couldn't read them, did not know what the ATM was asking them to do.
That is so sad.
It
is. That
is
so sad. But reading, we hear that statement that's been around since we were children. Reading is fundamental. Well, it is. It is. It's like a building block system. You have to be able to read and understand what you're reading. You have to comprehend, because no matter what subject you take, you still have to read. You could be an art class, but you still need to be able to read the instructions.
Correct.
You could be, in any kind of instructional setting, you have to be able to read something.
And like I said, and like you said, and I use the example of the ATM because I've seen, I'm not making this up, I'm not exaggerating. I've seen people get frustrated because they did not know the question that the machine was asking them. And as we get more and more into technology, you're going to get more and more into those kind of situations and interactions where there's not going to be a human being there. It's the machine. And if you can't read the words and understand what it's asking you to do, it's only going to allow you to go but so far before it shuts down.
Yep.
So it's not, for those that are listening, this is not just a matter of Marc and Naomi trying to get you to love how to read or love to read because we love to read. It's more than that. If you want to survive, you're going to have to comprehend. You're going to have to be able to decode and comprehend. The day of being able to get by not knowing how to read is, for the most part, over.
Right.
So the younger, and that's why a book like Naomi's is so important, because the quicker we can get kids involved and engaged, the better off they're going to be.
Absolutely. And there's so many opportunities now. If you have a child that needs support in literacy, there's organizations, there's opportunities. And let me tell you, I've partnered with an organization. Again, I'm in Michigan, and I'm in a suburb area of Detroit. So there's an organization called Center for Success, and their motto is empowering youth through literacy. So they service children in many of the underserved areas in our state. Detroit, of course, being one of the big major cities. And a lot of times where these literacy needs are, they're our children. They're Black and brown children.
Correct.
In our communities, right? So what I did is I partnered with them, and we actually have a book drive right now where I am getting my customers and kind, generous people. They are purchasing the Johari the Great, and we are donating it to Centers for Success so that they can give this book, because it is a teaching tool and a good story. They can give this book to the children that they are working with in their literacy programs. So it's going to help and support with vocabulary and comprehension and all the things that we talked about. So far we have 170 books that have been donated.
So how does that work? If somebody wanted to purchase a book to donate, how would they go about that?
They can go to my website, naomibooks.com, naomibooks.com, naomibooks.com. You can purchase my book there for yourself, but you can also participate in our literacy drive and purchase a book, and it will be donated directly to one of the children in these underserved areas that needs help and support in literacy.
So you said
that's where my heart is.
Okay, so you said it's available on Kindle and Amazon as well, in the download version?
Well, I can't do any donation or any.
No, because I know. No, that's okay. I'll tell you what. The reason I ask is because before the day is out, I am going to download it, and I'm also going to purchase some for your drive.
Oh, thank you! Yay, so that's awesome.
I will purchase, a few copies, for you to give to the kids to the drive. However you're going to do that. That is extremely important.
Yes, we are excited. Important. We are really excited about that. There's hundreds of children that they serve, but we're making a dent in it, and it's our goal to get this book into the hands of all of these kids because it's going to help them.
So that's before noon or a little shortly after noon, you'll see a hit somewhere in there.
Thank you.
Like I said, I've donated some copies to your drive as well as downloaded it on my Kindle. And
I'm on Kindle Unlimited. I know you're a big reader, so that's how I read so much. I'm on Kindle Unlimited.
I know that's right.
I read whatever I want for free, right?
I know that's right. But in any event, I mean, what you're doing, and I know I saw on your website, you said more books to come, but what you're doing is so, I cannot emphasize, critical. And right before, we've come to the end of the interview, and I'm going to allow you to promote in a minute. But one last thing I want to leave the listening audience. Mm-hmm. You've been hearing Naomi and I talking about, reading for the most part is survival. In the African American community, particularly with our older folks, we understand in terms of the times that you came through, you may or may not have had the opportunity, and that was by design, because there was a time that if black folks were trying to learn how to read, we could be killed. Yeah. All right. So we get that in terms of depending on where you are. So where I'm going with this is, the shame is not in not knowing how to read. The shame is knowing that you don't know how to read and you don't ask for help. Yeah. That's the word. Because don't be ashamed. If you're an adult and you don't know how to read, please, as Naomi said, there's enough organizations out there. It's not a matter of being shamed. There shouldn't be no shame in your game. Get the help. Ask for the help that you need. If you don't know how, if you've gotten to the level, if you've gotten to the point as an adult for whatever reason and don't know how to read, ask for help. There is no shame in your not knowing how to read, but there is shame in your not knowing how to read and you staying silent. You're not letting anybody know. You're not asking somebody to help you because there's no reason for it. There's enough folks out there who do what we do, who are more than willing to help. And then on the other end, if we can get our kids from the jump, like she said, that 5, 6, 7, if we can get them started on a book like Johari the Great from the beginning, our kids, our grandkids, our godkids, nieces, nephews, cousins, whomever, if we can get them at a young age reading and develop that love for reading, then we won't even be in that situation 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the road.
That's right. That's perfect.
So we are at this point now where I shut my mic off for a few minutes, and you have the opportunity to promote, like you just did in terms of websites, book signings, your campaign that you have going on with the fundraiser to donate to the literacy drive, appearances, how folks can get in touch. You can say anything except the cost or the dollar amount. That's the only thing we can't do on the air is to talk price, because they can figure that out and work that out with you when they get to your site or either if they talk to you. But anything short of price, you want to shout out anybody, again, websites, telephone number, anything that you want to do over the next couple of minutes, I'm going to shut the mic off and you have the opportunity to do that.
Okay, great. Well, I have enjoyed our conversation so much because this is what I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about our children reading and comprehending and understanding and doing something with what they've read. So Johari the Great is about a young man who discovers his gift, and his gift is writing. And through the book, because he's a person of color, I thought it was important to also include his family, his community, his friends, and his teacher as people who were crucial to him discovering his greatness. And again, I believe that all children have greatness within them, just waiting to be discovered. And it's up to us, the adults, to help them to do that. So Johari the Great is available on NaomiBooks.com. There is the book. There's also a coloring book that goes with the book if you choose. And the coloring book is also a teaching book. There are, there are fill in the blanks that the child will be able to refer back to the book and also enjoy coloring as well. And again, if you would like to support our literacy drive, that information is also on the website, NaomiBooks.com. It's important that our children can see themselves in a book. And I believe if they can do that, that they will pick up books more often. So thank you very much.
All right. And it is exactly as it sounds. N-A-O. I'm doing this phonetically now. N-A-O-M-I. Naomi. Books.com. No spaces. It's all connected. NaomiBooks.com. That's her website. Go there and you can see what we've been talking about for the last hour or so. Naomi, thank you so much for rising early to join me. It has been an absolute, this is my passion as well.
Thank you so much. This has been great. The time just flew by, but this has been great. We share that passion, and it's crucial. It's crucial, and I've enjoyed talking to you.
Well, thank you. Same here. Have a wonderfully blessed rest of the day, weekend, week, and, keep doing what you're doing. We're going to be in touch because, like I said, I would definitely this afternoon order my copies and as well as donate to the book drive, the literacy drive, and we'll be in touch. All right?
Thank you. I'm going to send you that information,
Thank you very much. And I'll be sending you the links for the show. You can do what you want with them when you receive them.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Thank you. God bless you.
Take care. God bless you as well.
Bye-bye.
All right. That wraps up another episode of The Reading